If you've been watching the amazing digital Circus, you've probably noticed something darker beneath the surface. These characters aren't just quirky, they're broken in very specific ways. Each one represents a different struggle with mental health, and the show's genius lies in how they navigate not just their own demons, but everyone else's too. Now, I'm not pulling this out of thin air. I've spent considerable time researching psychological disorders, and I want to break down what's really happening with these characters. But here's the thing. We need to get something straight first. Before we get started, just a quick heads up. This video dives into some serious mental health topics. If you're personally going through something similar, it might hit a bit too hard. It's completely okay to skip this one and come back when you're feeling ready. Also, I need to be crystal clear. I'm not a therapist. I'm not your therapist. This is analysis of fictional characters for entertainment and educational purposes. Don't use anything here to diagnose yourself, your friends, or make any life decisions. If you need real help, talk to real professionals. All right, let's break this down. Let's start with the most obvious one, Kinger. He seems completely stuck in his own world most of the time, showing signs that look a lot like schizophrenia, maybe even with a bit of early dementia. His symptoms check multiple boxes. The hallucinations are constant. Remember that insect collection nobody else sees? That's textbook. His speech patterns are all over the place, jumping between topics without logical connection. He moves erratically, behaving childishly despite clearly being older. All classic presentations. But here's what's really interesting about schizophrenia in this context. Delusions. In the real world, this usually means paranoia, feeling watched, persecuted, that kind of thing. For Kinger, it manifests differently. He genuinely seems to believe Kane's adventures matter, that there are real stakes. He never questions the structure because to him it might actually feel real. The memory issues and his age point toward dementia running alongside the schizophrenia, not uncommon. But his physical coordination is still solid, suggesting it's early stage if present at all. Now here's where it gets wild. Those moments in the dark where Kinger suddenly becomes completely coherent, that's based on something real called terminal lucidity. It sounds made up, but it's documented. In about 5% of severe dementia or schizophrenia cases, patients suddenly regain full cognitive function right before death. We're talking 48 hours or less. Specific triggers like familiar music or certain environments can bring someone back completely. They remember everything, speak clearly, act like themselves. Scientists don't really understand why it happens, and studying it is off limits ethically because you'd be taking away someone's last moments with their family to run tests. But Kinger's in a digital body. He literally cannot die. So he gets these moments of clarity without the death sentence attached. You might wonder if abstraction serves the same function as death here, but here's the thing. Abstraction seems triggered by psychological breakdown, not physical decline. And these lucid moments, they're actually his most peaceful times. So the comparison doesn't quite track. Zooble's dealing with something millions of people struggle with. Their body doesn't feel like them. That's body dysmorphic disorder, and in their case, it's pretty clearly gender dysphoria. They've got all these interchangeable parts, infinite customization options, and yet nothing ever feels right. That's the cruel reality of dysmorphia. External changes don't fix internal disconnect. Their dialogue makes it pretty obvious they're non-binary, trapped in a form that fundamentally doesn't match their identity. Layered on top of that is severe depression. Watch their behavior. They've got no interest in activities, they isolate constantly, they're irritable as a default setting. Classic major depressive disorder, that line about wanting the ability to have sex, that's actually connected. Sex releases a flood of dopamine and other neurotransmitters that depressed brains are starving for. It's not really about the act itself, it's about accessing feelings their brain can't produce on its own. But there's hope showing up. Their friendship with Gangal is actually therapeutic, whether they realize it or not. Depression thrives on isolation and inactivity. Having someone to care about, someone to protect and spend time with, that breaks the cycle. It gives them purpose, and purpose is what pulls people out of that hole. At first glance, Gangal screams bipolar disorder, right? Two masks, two mood states, seems obvious, but it doesn't actually fit. Bipolar requires both depression and mania. The depression side? Absolutely. She's constantly down on herself, sees no value in her accomplishments, obsesses over what others think. That's all there. But mania isn't just being happy. It's elevated mood to a dangerous degree. Excessive energy, risky behavior, no impulse control, no fear of consequences. When Gangal has her comedy mask on, she's just normal. Maybe a little upbeat, but nothing manic about it. Here's the kicker. That scene where she talks about having a manic episode, she's lying. Not maliciously, she's lying to herself too. The mask is a tool for hiding what she really feels, and we see this play out clearly in episode 4. Real mania doesn't come with self-awareness during the episode. People don't usually recognize they're manic while it's happening. The fact that she can label it and reference it so casually tells you it's not genuine mania. It's a cover story for forced positivity. Regatha's harder to pin down because she's written with more depth. But the pattern becomes clear when you look at her childhood references. Her relationship with her mother was damaging. That criticism, that sense of never being good enough, carved itself into how she sees herself. Now she's locked in this cycle of negative self-perception and perfectionism, convinced every mistake defines her. Her coping mechanism? Become indispensable. Make everyone else happy so they'll validate her existence. Fill the hole her mother left. This is where people-pleasing becomes pathological. There's nothing wrong with being kind or helpful. But Regatha's not doing it because she values others. She's doing it because she needs them to need her. She requires their approval to feel worthwhile. That's what creates the toxic positivity everyone picks up on. She's aggressively upbeat in situations where it makes no sense, and people can sense the inauthenticity. It's a survival strategy from childhood that doesn't work anymore, but she can't let go of. Some people have suggested histrionic personality disorder, a condition involving shallow emotions and compulsive attention-seeking. She's got the emotional shallowness down, but she doesn't crave the spotlight. HP also typically involves inappropriate sexual behavior, which is nowhere in her character. Quick stop here because Pomni deserves clarification. A lot of people slap generalized anxiety disorder on her and call it done. I don't buy it. Everything Pomni experiences is appropriate fear. She's thrown into a digital nightmare prison. Of course she's terrified. She encounters actual horror elements, reasonable to be scared. But GAD isn't about reasonable fears. It's persistent, excessive worry about everyday things, often with no clear trigger. Pomni doesn't show that. She's confident when she needs to be. She explores dangerous areas voluntarily. She engages socially without the constant dread that defines anxiety disorders. What we're seeing is a normal person, well, relatively normal, adjusting to insane circumstances. She's basically our baseline for what healthy responses look like in this environment, saving the most complex for last. Everyone argues about Jax, narcissist, sociopath, or just hiding pain behind cruelty? The answer is probably all of the above, but with a specific origin: unresolved grief, creating traumatic narcissism. Here's what we know. Jax can show genuine care, but only to Pomni and only in small doses. He clearly had a deep connection to Ribbit before they abstracted. And in episode 6, he literally says he's just an asshole, like it's his defining trait. Put those pieces together. Jax wasn't always this bad. When Ribbit was around, he had more emotional range, actual friendships. Then Ribbit abstracted, and Jax couldn't handle it. He blamed himself, specifically blamed the worst parts of himself for causing it. His response was to lean into those parts. If the bad in him caused the loss and he becomes entirely that bad thing, then he's in control of it. More importantly, if he's completely terrible, no one gets close enough to hurt him like that again. That's trauma-induced narcissism. It mimics real narcissistic personality disorder, but it's actually a defense mechanism. He's not incapable of empathy. He's actively suppressing it as self-protection against future loss. The grief is still there. He never processed it. And everything we see, the cruelty, the detachment, the narcissistic behavior, is armor built from unhealed wounds. That's the human cast analyzed. I'm deliberately leaving out Kane and Bubble because diagnosing AI entities feels wrong when we're talking about real conditions real people suffer from. Which brings me to the most important point of this entire video. These are fictional characters. Do not do this to real people. I can analyze them without conducting therapy because they're not real. But attempting to diagnose people in your life based on behavior you observe, that's unethical, potentially dangerous, and honestly pretty arrogant. If you or someone you know is struggling, get real help from licensed professionals, not some person on YouTube talking about cartoon characters. That's it from me. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your own thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your take on what each character represents.